Flames clawed at the night sky as Anderson Elementary School crackled and roared in chaos. Smoke spiraled through shattered windows, thick and acidic, carrying the cries of trapped children on the fourth floor. Officer Michael Bradford stood at the base of the collapsing structure, his hand firm on the harness of his partner, Thor. The German shepherd's body vibrated with alertness, golden eyes fixed forward, not on the flames, but beyond them. Fourth floor, east wing, structures failing, the fire chief shouted. Michael met Thor's gaze. In it, he saw the same resolve he'd come to trust over years of shared missions. "Ready, partner?" he whispered. Thor didn't bark. He didn't need to. He moved. Through blinding smoke and blistering heat, they climbed. Thor led, silent and sure, nose twitching, body slicing through corridors like instinct incarnate. On the fourth floor, they found a huddled classroom, 15 children and one teacher. Smoke curled around them, choking their cries. Thor moved fast, nudging children toward safety, circling the injured. Michael followed, cradling the teacher, shouting directions through the panic. And then, a crack like thunder. A wooden beam groaned and began to fall. In a heartbeat, Thor lunged, shoving Michael and the final girl out of harm's way. It was pure instinct, pure heroism. But the camera didn't catch that. A flash, a photo. Thor's teeth grazing the girl's jacket as he pulled her from danger. The next morning, the headline, "Rescue Dog Attacks Child During School Fire." No clarification could unring that bell. Fear, loud and unforgiving, spread faster than truth. Parents protested. Social media buzzed. The same town that had once cheered for Thor as its guardian angel now demanded his removal. Michael pleaded. Witnesses testified. Body cam footage was dissected. But the image, frozen, visceral, was stronger than reason. Within weeks, Thor's badge was stripped. Michael faced an impossible choice: keep his job or stand by his partner. He had a newborn daughter at home. He chose his family. And Thor, without fault, without fight, was labeled a risk. Dangerous, unfit for duty. He passed from one foster home to another, each abandoning him in fear of his misunderstood past. The community that once hailed him as a hero now averted their eyes. His reputation, so carefully built through courage and compassion, was reduced to a headline and a whisper. Eventually, Thor landed in the hands of James Miller, a man known more for his alcohol than his kindness. What followed was slow erosion. The gleam left Thor's coat. The strength faded from his limbs. Still, he bore it all in silence. He didn't bite. He didn't bark. He waited, not for rescue, not for redemption, just for something, anything, to mean trust again. And as the autumn wind blew down Warren Street and shoppers passed by without looking, Thor lay tied to a rusting pole at a market's edge, rope fraying, spirit flickering. His world, once full of purpose, had narrowed to inches of dirty concrete and the sounds of a city that had forgotten him. But fate, as it often does, had not finished writing his story. He just didn't know yet that the person who would change everything was barely tall enough to reach his ears, and still believed that superheroes walked on 4 legs. Thor hadn't always been broken. He'd once been the pride of Vermont's elite Bradford K-9 training center, a German shepherd with both sharp instincts and a soul too gentle for the bite work he was born into. Where other pups lunged, Thor waited, watched, understood. He didn't dominate. He guided. During his police selection trial, Michael had known instantly, that's the one. Their bond was effortless. While others chased aggression and obedience, Thor learned intuition, how to find the lost, calm the terrified, act without command when it mattered most. Within months, he'd exceeded every benchmark. In his first year, he and Michael had performed 43 rescues, from lost children in the mountains to elderly survivors in flood zones. He became a symbol, a story, a legend. The children in town knew his name. The governor gave him a medal. Photos of him cradling a baby during the Mason County floods hung in classrooms and fire stations. But no medal could shield him from the power of fear. The fallout from the school fire became a slow unraveling of everything Thor had built. Rumors spread like ash on the wind. Foster homes treated him like a dormant threat. People crossed streets to avoid him. Once, he'd been greeted with pats on the head. Now, he was met with locked doors. When James Miller took him, it wasn't with kindness. The man saw a free, once famous dog and tied him outside the market like an old bicycle. He offered no affection, no shelter, just scraps and indifference. And so Thor waited through hunger, through rain, through the sound of children laughing without fear, until, one day, a pair of honey-blonde pigtails and bright blue eyes paused in front of him, and Thor, forgotten and discarded, lifted his head. Emily Parker was the kind of child who made grown-ups pause mid-stride, not because she was loud or demanding, but because something about her felt still, like a whisper in a noisy room. At 5 years old, she already had the soul of someone twice her age, eyes that listened, hands that comforted. She was the Parker's miracle. After years of miscarriages and closed nursery doors, Sarah and David Parker had nearly given up. But one spring morning, Emily arrived, tiny, blinking, radiant, and from that moment, their lives rearranged around her gentle gravity. Sarah, a child psychologist, had known early that Emily was different. While other toddlers clung to toys, Emily watched faces. When a friend scraped a knee, she was the first to kneel. At school, she shared lunches with kids who forgot theirs and hugged classmates who cried quietly in corners. Her teacher, Mrs. Thompson, said she had an old soul stitched into a young heart. The Parkers weren't just a loving family. They were a thoughtful one. David, a civil rights attorney, spoke to Emily about fairness in ways that made her think, not fear. Sarah guided her sensitivity without dimming it. They taught her boundaries, how to ask before petting dogs, how to read not just words, but body language. Every Saturday, the family walked the Warren Street Market, a place as woven into their history as bedtime stories. The market buzzed with colors and chatter, fruit stalls and flower carts, warm bread and strangers who felt like neighbors. Vendors knew Emily by name. Some saved strawberries for her. Others handed her little paper cones of roasted almonds, just because. Emily loved helping. She carried bags too big for her hands. She chatted with lonely grandmas and helped Mr. Chin stack fruit when his arthritis flared. Her parents always kept close, guiding gently, but Emily often needed no guidance at all. Her instincts were careful, her kindness precise. And yet, under her sunny laugh and animated stories, there was something else, an ache she didn't know how to name. Being an only child was sometimes quiet, in the wrong ways. At night, she created rescue missions with her stuffed animals. She made stories of dogs who saved others, who were misunderstood, who needed someone to see the truth in them. She never imagined one of those stories would walk into her real life, tied to a post, with sad eyes and a past no one had the courage to defend. At home, Emily's world reflected the same quiet warmth she carried into the market. Their Victorian house, just 3 blocks away, hummed with life. Family photos lining the walls, her artwork covering the refrigerator like a patchwork quilt of color and meaning. In the garden, she and her mother planted tulips and tomatoes, learning the rhythm of nurturing things that couldn't speak but still felt. Recently, her drawings had changed. Gone were the flowers and butterflies. Now, page after page showed caped animals saving people from danger, dogs with wide eyes and solemn faces. Beneath them, Emily sometimes wrote words she wasn't yet confident spelling: hero, lost, found. David and Sarah talked in hushed voices at night, about maybe adopting a pet, about Emily's expanding imagination, about what she might be processing through these stories of rescue and redemption. They watched her hold neighbor dogs with unspoken understanding. They saw how she crouched to meet animals at eye level, how her voice softened when she spoke to them, how animals always responded in kind. They knew she was ready. What they didn't know was that somewhere nearby, a hero was waiting too, broken, silent, and just beginning to believe in the sound of hope again. The morning of October 15th dawned crisp and golden, autumn leaves chasing each other along the cobblestones of Warren Street. Emily wore her favorite blue dress beneath a red wool coat, pigtails bouncing as she skipped toward the market, humming softly. The scent of apple cider and pumpkin spice swirled in the air. Halloween decorations dangled from vendor tents like whispered promises of mischief and wonder. "Can we visit Mr. Chin first?" she asked, tugging her mother's sleeve. But before Sarah could answer, Emily stopped. Between two fruit stalls, in the slanting shadow of a forgotten corner, a shape shifted. Not menacing, not loud, just still. Emily tilted her head. Tied to a rusting pole with a frayed rope was a German shepherd, thin, matted, silent. His ears flicked, but he didn't move. His body was that of a dog long trained to stay invisible. Emily's breath caught in her throat. "Daddy, look." David stepped beside her, eyes narrowing. He recognized the dog immediately, but Emily didn't wait. She crouched a safe distance away, sitting back on her heels, the way her parents had taught her. Her voice barely reached above the rustling market noise. "Hi," she whispered. "I'm Emily." Thor lifted his head slowly, and their eyes met. In his, there was no aggression, only exhaustion, a kind of sorrow so deep it settled like fog. Emily saw it, felt it, and in that moment she didn't see a news story or a cautionary tale. She saw someone who was hurting. Sarah's voice was tight with worry. "Emily, come back." But Emily didn't move. "He's not dangerous," she said firmly. "He's just very, very sad." As if the words had meaning beyond their sound, Thor's tail gave the smallest trembling wag. Mr. Chin stepped from behind his stand. "She's right," he said quietly. "That dog's been here for weeks. Never seen him growl. Not once." Emily reached into her pocket and pulled out her breakfast apple, glancing to her parents. "Can I give it to him?" David hesitated. But then he looked into Thor's eyes and saw not a threat, but the remnants of something noble. He knelt beside Emily. "Okay, but let's do it slowly." David carefully broke the apple into small pieces, placing one in Emily's open palm. She held it out, her fingers flat, steady. Thor watched her with the stillness of someone who didn't know whether kindness was real anymore. Then, gently, reverently, he leaned forward and took the slice. His lips barely brushed her hand. A single tear slid down Emily's cheek. "Why is he tied here?" she asked, voice trembling. "Where's his family?" Before an answer could come, a voice cut through the moment like a blade. "Hey, what are you doing with my dog?" James Miller stumbled forward, his eyes bloodshot, his gait uneven. Thor's posture changed, not into aggression, but into something far more tragic. Submission. He backed away, head low, body curling into itself as far as the rope would allow. But then something flickered. As Miller neared Emily, Thor shifted, not to flee, but to place himself between her and harm. A barrier, a shield. It wasn't forceful, it wasn't loud, it was instinct. Emily's hand rested lightly on his back. "It's okay," she whispered to him, but her eyes stayed locked on the man who called himself Thor's owner. The magic of the moment had been pierced, but something irreversible had happened. Emily had seen the truth, and Thor, for the first time since his fall from grace, had chosen to protect someone again. As David pulled her gently away, Emily turned over her shoulder and said words that would change everything. "Don't worry, Thor. I'll come back for you. I promise." Emily didn't forget. In the days after that first encounter, her drawings changed again. Thor appeared in every one, sometimes with wings, sometimes wearing a cape, always watching over someone small and lost. Her stories became courtroom dramas acted out by stuffed animals. She called them trials, each ending with a proclamation. "Thor is a hero." At dinner, she interrupted her grandfather mid-sentence. "Did you know his name is Thor?" she announced. "Like the brave one in Daddy's stories. But he doesn't have a hammer. He has kind eyes." Her conviction unsettled the adults. At school, she launched a rescue dog project for show and tell. Her teacher, Mrs. Thompson, watched with quiet awe as Emily pinned up news clippings and hand-drawn posters. She couldn't read every word yet, but she understood the truth they held. On the following Saturday, she returned to the market, allowance money in hand. She marched straight to Mr. Chin's fruit stand, bought the ripest apple she could find, and approached Thor with calm familiarity. This time, his ears perked up at her voice. His tail wagged, not faintly, but with real momentum. Emily sat in her usual crouch, offering him the apple piece by piece, whispering about her week, her school project, her reading lessons. She showed him a new drawing. Thor standing tall, wearing a superhero cape. "I made this for you," she said. Thor took each bite slowly, reverently, his eyes never leaving hers. From a few feet away, Sarah watched it unfold. The calm, the trust, the invisible thread tightening between girl and dog. And she knew. This wasn't just a child enamored by an animal. This was something deeper, something sacred. The confrontation came a week later, sharper than any storm. Emily sat by Thor, humming gently, when James Miller appeared. Angrier, drunker, louder. His boots scraped the cobblestones like warning bells. Thor stiffened. The tension pulsed off him in waves. "I told you to stay away from my dog," Miller slurred, voice echoing down the market lane. Vendors looked up from stalls. A hush spread like spilled oil. Emily's hand rested protectively on Thor's back. David stepped forward. "Sir, we've been observing your treatment of this dog. There are laws." "Laws?" Miller laughed, cruel and bitter. "He's my property. I can do what I want." He yanked the rope hard. Thor stumbled. "Stop hurting him!" Emily shouted, eyes blazing. "He was a hero. He saved people." Miller snarled. "That mutt attacked a kid. He's a danger." "No," Emily said, trembling. "I read the articles. He pulled her from the fire. The photo was wrong." The crowd was swelling. Mrs. Rodriguez from the flower stall stepped forward. "I've watched that dog for weeks. No food, no water. I've called animal control. No one came." "I have proof," Mr. Chin added, lifting his phone. "Photos, videos, every day." More vendors nodded, phones raised. Silent witnesses, finally finding voice. Miller's expression twisted. He raised his hand as if to strike. And then, Thor moved, not to attack, not to flee. He stood and calmly placed his body between Emily and the man. No growl, no snarl, just a quiet wall of fur and will, a protector, a guardian, a hero. "Step away from the dog, Mr. Miller," came a new voice. Officer Sarah Martinez had arrived, radio in hand. "We've received multiple reports of animal abuse, and I'm witnessing neglect right now." Miller tried to bluster. "You can't." "We can," she cut in, "and we will." As animal control was called, the crowd tightened its circle. Phones recorded. Vendors gave statements. Years of silence unraveled in minutes. Miller was escorted away. Thor stood unmoving, gaze fixed on Emily. "You see," she whispered, tears spilling. "Heroes get happy endings." Thor's tail wagged. For the first time in months, it wagged with hope. "I need a foster home lined up immediately," said the animal control officer. "Someone who understands trauma, who knows how to handle a service dog." Emily stepped forward without hesitation. "We'll take him," she said. And the way Thor leaned toward her, soft, steady, sure, was the only permission anyone needed. The house buzzed with quiet urgency in the days that followed. Emily dubbed it Operation Save Thor, and took it as seriously as any soldier planning a campaign. David transformed the home office into a legal war room, printing out animal welfare laws and combing through Thor's past. Sarah dug up training protocols and trauma rehabilitation research. Emily decorated Thor's room with pictures of him in heroic poses. One even showed him in a crown above the caption, "A hero can be both." Rachel Bennett, director of the local shelter, visited daily. "This case is rare," she explained. "He's not just any dog. He's a public figure. And this time, we're doing it right." Together, they built a file thicker than a legal textbook. Mr. Chin's time-stamped photos, Mrs. Rodriguez's videos, even bakery footage showing Miller yanking Thor's leash too hard. It painted a damning portrait. But the heart of the case was something no document could fully capture: the bond. During supervised visits, Thor would light up at the sound of Emily's voice. His ears perked, tail wagging with cautious excitement. When she read to him, his breathing slowed. His pulse steadied. The shelter staff noticed. "He stabilizes when she's here," a vet whispered. "Like, she's his tether." David and Sarah watched, amazed. Emily didn't force affection. She offered presence. Her understanding was quiet but profound. She talked to Thor like he already belonged. At home, they built routines. Sarah adjusted her work schedule. David handled legal filings. Emily created a chart of brave moments with star stickers. Didn't flinch at thunder. Ate breakfast while mommy was in the room. Let me pet him without looking away. Progress came slow, but it came. The first night Thor came home, the sky hung heavy with clouds, but the air was warm. Rachel opened the shelter van door, and Thor stepped out cautiously, groomed, cleaner, but still uncertain. Emily sat cross-legged on the porch, a welcome sign in her lap. "Hi, Thor," she said softly. "You're home." His tail wagged, not because he was sure, but because something inside him wanted to try. Thor entered the house with careful grace, pausing at each doorway until David or Sarah gave a nod. His training was still there, buried beneath months of neglect. Emily led him to his room, walls lined with her artwork at eye level, soft blankets, a bed with high sides placed in the corner, where he could see both the door and the window. "This one's you saving the baby," she pointed gently. "And this one is you helping the lost kids. And this—" She paused, finger resting on a drawing of Thor curled beside a little girl. "This one's you with us, your new family." Thor sniffed each corner. His tail gave a soft thump. Then he circled twice and settled onto the bed, his eyes never leaving Emily. The healing wasn't easy. The first thunderstorm sent Thor into a panic. Instead of trying to stop it, Emily sat beside him and whispered stories about brave dogs, afraid of storms. "Being scared doesn't mean you're not brave," she murmured. "It means you're still trying." When he couldn't eat while others were in the room, she sat nearby, humming softly, never looking directly at him. "No one's going to take it, Thor. Not here." Each walk around the block brought judgmental glances, whispered doubts. But Emily came prepared, with handmade cards listing Thor's accomplishments. "He saved 27 people in the Mason County flood," she'd say proudly. "He just needs someone to believe in him." He started checking on her at night, lying just outside her bedroom door, alert, but calm. When she struggled with a nightmare, he nudged open the door and lay beside her until morning. And the night he found his blanket and gently placed it over her sleeping body, it broke Sarah's heart in the best way. He wasn't just recovering. He was remembering who he was, and relearning, with Emily's steady love, who he could become again. As autumn surrendered to winter, Thor's transformation echoed through the Parker household like a quiet revolution. He was no longer just the dog. He was Thor, watcher of doorways, collector of slippers, guardian of bedtime shadows. Every family member found a different version of themselves in him. For Sarah, the child psychologist who once studied trauma from a distance, Thor became a living lesson. She started journaling their daily routines, noting how he seemed to sense tension before it surfaced. If Emily was anxious, Thor sat closer. If Sarah stayed up late working, he lay quietly near her desk, never asking, just offering presence. David's bond ran deeper than he'd expected. Their morning walks became sacred, just the two of them beneath bare trees and breath-clouded dawns. "I thought we were helping him," David confessed one night, "but I think he's helping us more." The grandparents, once unsure, now brought dog biscuits every Sunday. Margaret knitted sweaters with Thor's name stitched in soft wool. John, a retired military vet, saw something familiar in Thor's posture, his vigilance, his purpose. Even the house changed. Chairs shifted to give Thor clear sightlines. Routines bent around his comfort. Emily moved her storytime spot to the hallway, just so he could listen from his bed. She called him Happiness Guard and told guests, "He checks on us when we don't even know we need it." But the most profound change wasn't in schedules or seating. It was in how the family had begun to speak. They spoke softer, waited longer, read body language like a second script. They had, without realizing it, started to live the way Thor did, with attention, with instinct, with care. Outside the home, whispers turned to words, and words into stories. Neighbors who once crossed the street now paused to pet Thor. Children who had been told to fear him now drew him in school projects. And when asked why he wore a special vest with "in-training service companion" stitched on the side, Emily would simply say, "He's healing, like people do." Holiday season arrived, and with it, new traditions. Thor had his own stocking by the fireplace, his name embroidered in bright red by Emily's careful hands. He tolerated antlers for the annual family photo, with dignified patience. His bed in the hallway became the new family hub. Sarah read there. David sorted papers there. Emily did her homework leaning against his side. One evening, after a difficult day at school, Emily came home teary-eyed. A classmate had mocked her project about a dangerous dog. She curled up by Thor's side, quiet, until she whispered, "They don't see what I see." Thor nuzzled her gently, placing one paw across her knee in silent solidarity. "You don't have to prove anything," Sarah said from the doorway. "Not everyone understands redemption until they need it themselves." Emily looked up. "But I do, because he's more than what happened to him, and so am I." By New Year's, Thor had reclaimed more than muscle and appetite. He'd reclaimed identity, purpose, and a family. Not perfect, but the kind that loved him on his scared days as much as his brave ones. And one snowy evening, as Emily tucked a blanket around Thor and whispered goodnight, she paused. "You're not my hero because you saved people," she said. "You're my hero because you let me save you back." Outside, snow fell silently onto cobblestones and rooftops. Inside, a girl and a dog breathed in sync. Two broken hearts, made whole again by choosing each other.